It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
.06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Thursday, and I swear I can see the weekend from here.
Today's show is sponsored by Armpit Hair Dye, because waving goodbye should be more colorful.
As I've said before when I played that one, it was actually a thing. The Dan, who lives in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, came up with that one because he actually showed me an article where people were dyeing their hair on their armpits. Look, decorate yourself however you want there, but it became a thing for a while.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave. A lot to talk about today. Togety Pass still closed. I have updates on the fire there and some of the other fires around the state of Wyoming. Get to that in just a bit. And also, the shooting at the school in Georgia, some more information on that. But first now, just something different, which I know we need to do now and then. Another California bill. God, California. There are states out there, a few states, that if California passes something into a law, that their state will automatically do it. California did it, so we're going to do it. That's actually a law they have on the books. There's a few cities that do that, too. They think California is so wise, I don't know why, that they'll just go ahead and pass it because California said so, so we automatically will pass it. Dumbest thing I ever heard of, but all right. California bill will require speed limit alarms in your car. It's heading to the governor's desk for approval. I don't know if he will or not, but I just want you to imagine you're driving down the road and you're starting to break the speed limit and some alarm goes off. Yeah, and that would be really annoying, especially for people who live in hilly areas, because I know even if I have my cruise control on and I'm heading down a hill, I might cross over the speed limit not by much, but speed controls on your car are not perfect. And so there's times they will cross over if you're going down a steep hill. So now when some alarm starts going off, what is that alarm going to sound like? Something annoying Californian for sure, but all right. The story says California legislators passed a bill requiring speed limit detectors and alarms be installed in new vehicles made, sold, or leased in a bid to use the state's market size to regulate the national automotive industry. Now, before I finish reading here, yet another reason I would not buy a new car in California, but also if something like that were installed in a car that I bought, I would disable it. And sometimes when I say things like that, people will argue with, well, you really can't because the way they set up the computer. Trust me, somebody knows how to disable it. I'll get it done. All right, so signed by Governor Newsom. Let's see. By the way, you're going to love this. The bill was written by Senator Scott Wiener, a Democrat of San Francisco. You write your own jokes. Would require the 2030 model year of vehicles made, sold, and leased in California, except for two-wheelers and emergency vehicles, to have a visual and audio warning when the driver goes 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. Oh, okay. Well, that answers the question about driving downhill with the cruise control on, because my cruise control never lets me go 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. So a few miles an hour over it is not going to be a big deal. Quote, traffic fatalities have risen alarmingly in California and across the nation, with speeding being a significant contributor to the public health crisis, Wiener wrote in his bill. So Many newer cars already have forward-facing cameras for advanced safety systems, says the story. Approximately 90% of cars sold in the United States have tracking systems that track not just the car's location at all times, but also where the car is when it shifts gears, when the car doors open and close. Automakers then sell the data to data brokers, in case you didn't know. While some speed limit systems could use front-facing cameras to read speed limit signs, as you know, if you use your GPS, I know when I travel, and by the way, it's not always accurate. So, not my vehicle. I have an older vehicle intentionally. I'll tell you about that in a second. When I take one of the radio station vehicles, which I'm allowed to use for different purposes, and if I go ahead and call up the GPS, I want a map to get me where I'm going. And a lot of times I know the way, but I like using the map feature anyway. And if you use one of those features, you know it'll show you what the speed limit is for that road, right? But is it always correct? Sometimes it's not. I've been on roads where it tells me the speed limit is different than what the signs are saying. And I don't know why, but it's not always correct. But all right. Let's see. These systems are not mandated in the United States, but California, which, by the way, California is not in the United States, so is large enough that its mandate would change national auto standards. Quote, in effect, the author is attempting to leverage the purchase power of the state to create new standards for nationwide industry, something the state has done several times before on subjects regarding toxic compounds, establishing minimum conditions for animal used in food products, et cetera, et cetera. The story says the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, which represents car manufacturers, and the California Car Dealer Association and the EU already requiring vehicles have similar systems in 2024, albeit in a less stringent control on how those systems operate. U.S. requiring the use of emergency braking systems starting in 2029 that should reduce pedestrian traffic deaths. The story says evidence suggests that the rise of American traffic fatalities is attributed to both reduced traffic policing and citations for behavior such as dangerous driving. And I will also say the weight of American cars, which is kind of big, but I would also say distracted driving, the number of people who are riding down the road looking at their phone and not at the road. I am so glad I own an older car, which I do intentionally. And recently, I don't need to replace my car. It's doing fine. But a little while ago, I was just curious about the car market. And even though newer cars have a lot of neat features, I noticed there's a whole lot of features in there that I don't want to pay for. They're good features, a lot of them are nice features, but I don't necessarily want to pay for all that. So I found myself looking at older cars because not only are they just more affordable, but they're stripped down of a lot of the features that I don't want to have to pay for. Morning, Rand, Brienne, and Fort Danger. Wiener is a creep. He wanted to make it legal to be able to have sex with minors, providing the other person was 10 years or older. Why do these people keep getting elected? Well, that's true. Don't forget there's also the other creep, Anthony Weiner. That's a whole nother story. Morning, Paul. Paul says California has been known to the United States to cause cancer throughout the country. Yes, California is a cancer. And we're all hoping someday the big one happens and that cancer gets lopped off and drops into the sea.
So I pulled this guy over and I said, "How high are you?" And he said, "No, sir, it's hi. How are you?"
Cop pulled me over. He said, "Papers?" I said, "Scissors." And I won. So I drove off. He must have wanted a rematch or something because he was following me for like 45 minutes.
You asked for an expert. We didn't have the budget for that. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. and 24/7 on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
I wouldn't be living as good of a life with ALS if it wasn't for MDA. MDA is helping people live stronger and love longer. Learn more at mda.org today.
6:23 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. All right, so I'm just going to wrap up this. We have so many other important things to talk about. If you're just joining me, I was pointing out California's passed a bill. We'll see if their governor signs it. He might. That by, 2030, I think it is. They want in California alarms in your car. So if you cross over the speed limit by a certain number, this light will flash on your dash and the alarm will go off. Now, I said earlier, my car is older. I got a great deal on a vehicle. If you want to look up what they look like, it's called a Saturn Vue. It looks like an SUV, but mine, and it's a good-looking little car, too, but I got mine at such a dirt cheap price and low mileage because they couldn't get it off the lot. It has a millennial anti-theft device, meaning it's a stick shift. So I think I'm pretty safe from anybody trying to rip off my vehicle. And I'm very happy to shift. I have no problem with that. This is why I was saying when I was looking at cars, not to buy one, I don't need one. But when I was looking at vehicles, if I were in the market, what would I be looking for today? And I started to decide on, as much as I love all of the bells and whistles of today's more modern vehicles, I got some really cool stuff in there. But if you wonder why the newer vehicles cost so damn much, one of the reasons is all of the stuff they're trying to pack into this. How many bells and whistles do you really need? Some of the stuff is very cool. I like it. But again, I look at it and go, but I don't need that. So I could save a ton of money by getting something much more basic, which I did way back when I was a young buck and I started to drive. Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of money, so I would look for cars that didn't have a whole lot of features on them, which is getting harder and harder to find these days, unless you want to go ahead and buy something used. And I do find that the market for this is actually improving, because as I looked into it, the market actually is improving, not just for used, but for cars out there that don't have a whole lot going on them. Like, for example, if you would like something, you're still going to have automatic windows, okay. There's a Nissan out there that they're still selling a manual transmission, which does save money. It is less expensive to buy a manual transmission. They still have it. There's not many of those out there on the roads these days, but Nissan at least still has them. But there's some other automobiles that are new out there that you can get for under $20,000. But again, if you're looking for a lot of features, it's not going to have it. Now, when you live in a place like Wyoming, I also notice you need something, and it depends on how you're driving, but usually a bit beefier, especially in the wintertime, something that can handle the winter. And that's something to consider as well, which you can get a good deal on, something, again, older, used, that's not going to have all the bells and whistles. To me, it's a big part of it is the government mandates that they keep putting into these vehicles. And not just like California mandating things, but mandates that come from the federal government as well. And now auto manufacturers have to add this. So it's not just that auto manufacturers are adding their own toys in there to make cars more expensive. And you got to have these things, But government, from your local state governments up to your federal government, are demanding more and more things be added to vehicles, which make them more expensive. And so what do you do to get something that is affordable and also reliable? So again, there are a few car manufacturers out there doing it. And I think, I'm just thinking this could be the next big market. Because I know Americans love their big vehicles and all their toys, but they also have to think about the affordability of it. And when a base model vehicle these days is like $35,000 and up, that can get difficult for a lot of people. So more and more people are looking for that smaller vehicle, but also the older vehicle as well, which is why I say at some point I'm going to have to go out. I don't need it now, but at some point I'll go out and get a new car. When I do, I think that older used car market is the first place that I'm going to look for a couple of reasons. Just cheaper to buy a used car. It's a lot more affordable to have a used car. Yeah, I'm not going to have all the toys, but also I don't have to put up with all the government mandates that go with it as well. All of these mandates that government are trying to put into vehicles, they want done by 2030 or 2050. Good. Buy something before that and drive it until the wheels fall off. And you'll do a whole lot better than a lot of the new things that they're trying to put out. Now, I will say, in many ways, newer vehicles are better than the older vehicles as far as safety features, as far as fuel economy goes, as far as situational awareness, maps, and other things like that. Comfort inside is a whole lot better. I'm not saying the new vehicles are bad. But, I mean, how much stuff do you want to pack in there that jack up the price? How much, honestly? All right. Yeah, Red and Casper says, more features, just more stuff that breaks. Yeah, which is true. I think about that a lot. The more you try to pack in there, the more stuff there is to go wrong, the more expensive it is going to be to maintain that vehicle. Local news is coming your way. After local news update on the weather forecast, you and I get back into it. And I got a whole list of other more serious topics to take a look at. I'll take a look at some Wyoming wildfire conditions right after local news. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Got something to say? Chat him on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app or call 888-97-WOODS.
$6:36 at time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. I got to go get some great response here. These guys, you guys, I just love some of the comments you send me. You don't have to necessarily call the program. You can. It's 888-97-WOODS, 888-97-WOODS, and I love the calls, but also people just text me. Download the Wake Up Wyoming app. It's free. And then hit the chat option and send me text messages while I'm on the air. And I answer. I text back, but I also talk about it on the air. So if you're just joining me, in California, they've passed a bill. We'll see if the governor signs it, so that vehicles that cross over the speed limit and a flashing light will happen and an alarm will go off. Okay, comments. Bert, who's in Cheyenne. Why stop at just an alarm? Have the car use a ticket, then charge your bank account. See, I can see that. A voice comes on, a really snotty voice. You are driving 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. That is a $250 fine, which has been debited from your checking account. Would you like a paper receipt with that? And if you want a paper receipt, it'll spit one out of the dash right at you. It's a great idea. Big Wave is in Casper. So Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona will be lobbying hard for the new California speed alarm in cars, as all California car buyers will be crossing state lines for their purchases. Now, I did think about that, but not in the way you did, Big Wave. Right away, I thought, there's going to be people who are going to leave California, purchase a vehicle that doesn't have that, and come back. And I'm sure California is going to want to impose some fine for that or whatever, but that's just another reason people will leave California. Now, back to Cheyenne for Dan. Bugs in desktop computer software is bad enough, but bugs in the software of your vehicle is really annoying. Yeah, and they just keep adding more and more stuff in your vehicle. I mean, just packing it, which is why I say I really do admire a lot of the stuff that they have in vehicles today. It's very impressive. That's one of the reasons why your car is so fuel efficient. I mean, the idea that, they built them better in the past. No, actually, they build them better now. However, they started packing so many toys in there. That's where the problem is going to be. And that's also why it gets so expensive to purchase a car, which is why I look at older vehicles and think, at some point when I replace what I'm driving, sometime, I don't know when it's going to be, the car's okay now, but at some point when I have to replace what I'm driving, I'm going to be looking for something older. Just because there's less to break down, less to maintain. It's just easier and cheaper that way, and I'll get a lot out of it. I drive a vehicle until the wheels fall off. Whenever I purchase one, I usually purchase used, and then I just milk it for all it's worth before I go ahead and buy another one. So, I was going to mention the fires, and I have a lot more on the fires coming up later this morning. still have the same one like the house draw fire between KC and Buffalo is still going and still heavily contained but not out yet. Yesterday's rains were helpful. Nothing that's going to put a fire out, but it's helpful. Up around Gillette, there's still quite a bit burning on all sides of Gillette. They have their own problems there. And then the fires on the Wyoming-Montana border still going. A lot more containment has happened, and again, that rain helped a little bit. Togety Pass is still closed. And I did put some pictures up on the Wake Up Wyoming website this morning. I decided to take a look at the YDOT webcams of what the fire looked like overnight at night. Because, the time I get here in the morning, it's dark out. I want to see what that looked like. I got that and some pictures from some folks online that have been up into the area, and Togety Pass is not looking good right now. That's a lot of heavy timber that's burning up there. And a lot of that stuff is beetle kill that goes way back, which gets into the whole conversation, which we might get into this morning, about the mismanagement of land and how it's a good idea to get in there and manage land so that way when a fire does happen, because we know that even the storms that crossed over Togety Pass yesterday, which the Forestry Service was grateful for the rain, because, again, it's not going to put out the fire up there, but it certainly is helpful. And I was watching a video from them this morning, which said exactly that. They were happy to have it. They were worried about that came with some lightning, and so they're looking to see if the lightning started anything new up there. So we know there is a fire season. It's going to happen. Fire seasons will happen every year at about this time. How intense it is depends on how well we manage the land. And a lot of that land we have not been allowed to manage. And so I remember, I think I'll get into this next hour with it, but it's a couple of years ago I was up in the Snowy Range area to do some camping with some friends. And I was looking at just massive acres, miles and miles of beetle kill trees. And I thought, at some point, this is going to go up. And when it does, and boy, did that mountain range burn that summer. Wow, did it burn. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Don Day's got your weather forecast, the extended forecast, that I'm going to play for you right now. And that does offer maybe a little bit more of a chance of rain today, but then it dries out for a while.
If I manage to make it through this week, I would like my straitjacket to be black leather and my helmet to sparkle. Thank you.
Live and local, all across Wyoming. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join in at 888-97-WOODS or the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
6:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So Miss Mary is trying to get a hold of Frank Gambino, who's been on vacation past couple of days. He's got family, Frank does, visiting. And they're going on a tour of the Black Hills. So poor Frank had to get up yesterday to do his morning sports report. He was in Deadwood. And what he did was he found a casino that's open 24/7 and just took his cell phone along with his sports report and went into that casino and spent a lot of time just killing time waiting for the next sports report to come up, watching people waste their money on those gambling machines in the middle of the night, early morning, up way too, to be gambling and drinking at that time of the morning, what wrong turns? Oh, she's trying to, phone is down. Oh, really? Okay. She's not able to get a hold of them. But imagine, though, people that get up at that time of the morning and are sitting there in some gambling facility, drinking and gambling, playing basically those big machines. Whatever those are, I've looked at them. I could never do them myself. But that's supposed to be part of the sports betting thing and stuff like that. And what wrong turn did you make in your life that you're in Deadwood, South Dakota, at 6, almost 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier. Some people were up earlier, gambling away. There's got to be something better to do with your life at that time. I certainly think of better things to do. Hell, even just sleeping would be better to do. And then we started getting into this whole conversation about the waste of money that gambling is. So that's where Frank is right now. Miss Mary was trying to get a hold of him, but there seems to be something wrong with the phones to get out there, which I understand. In the meantime, I always have stuff that I put aside just in case Frank isn't here.
Baseball is a 19th century pastoral game. Football is a 20th century technological struggle. Baseball is played in a park, the baseball park. Football is played in a stadium, sometimes called Soldier Field or War Memorial Stadium. Baseball begins in the spring, the season of new life. Football begins in the fall when everything is dying. In football, you wear a helmet. In baseball, you wear a cap. Football is concerned with downs. What down is it? Baseball is concerned with ups. Who's up? Are you up? I'm not up. He's up. In football, you receive a penalty. In baseball, you make an error. Whoops. In baseball, the specialist comes in to kick something. In baseball, the specialist comes in to relieve somebody. Football has hitting, clipping, spearing, piling on, personal fouls, late hitting, and unnecessary roughness. Baseball has the sacrifice. Football is played in any kind of weather. Rain, snow, sleet, hail, fog. Can't see the game. Don't know if there is a game going on. Mud on the field. Can't read the uniforms. Can't read the yard markers. The struggle will continue. In baseball, if it rains, we don't go out to play. I can't go out. It's raining out. Baseball has the 7th inning stretch. Football has the 2-minute warning. In baseball, during the game in the stands, there's kind of a picnic feeling. Emotions may run high or low, but there's not that much unpleasantness. In football, during the game in the stands, you can be sure that at least 27 times you are perfectly capable of taking the life of a fellow human being, preferably a stranger. And finally, the objectives of the games are completely different. In football, the object is, for the quarterback, sometimes called the field general, to be on target with his aerial assault, riddling the defense by hitting his receivers with deadly accuracy in spite of the blitz, even if he has to use the shotgun. With short bullet passes and long bombs, he marches his troops into enemy territory, balancing this aerial assault with a sustained ground attack which punches holes in the forward wall of the enemy's defensive line. In baseball, the object is to go home and to be safe. I hope I'll be safe at home.
Personally, never did understand why in baseball they stop the game because there's a little bit of rain. I mean, that's just a chance to get muddy and have fun, as far as I'm concerned. All right, coming up on some local news that we have to take care of. Then we're going to roll into weather forecast after that. You and I get back into it. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Storm.
Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Thursday, and I swear I can see the weekend from here.
Today's show is sponsored by Armpit Hair Dye, because waving goodbye should be more colorful.
And you know, you can get scented hair dye. I don't know if you can, but they should be able to do that. All right, lots to cover this morning, and so I'm going to start with what happened yesterday while I was on the air. I kept looking up at the ridiculously large television they put in my studio here. And as you know, I just carry a channel that has raw news, just whatever's going on. Our cameras are there. And so they started showing this school in Georgia, and I didn't know why. It looked like everybody had been evacuated from the school, and I'm wondering, well, what happened? It looks like a situation, but they didn't really have any information while I was on the air. It was a little bit later in the morning after I got off the air that we find out, oh, it's a school shooting. Okay. And we have some of the details about who died, and I believe it was 4 died, 9 more injured. And the suspect who surrendered was a 14-year-old. And they had information about this young man about a year earlier, which means he would have been 13 at the time, but didn't have enough to take him in. Now, here's what I know so far. This is early information. We have a lot of work to do on this, but a 14-year-old student suspected of gunning down 4 people at his Georgia high school Wednesday was previously investigated, the story says, in connection with threats to carry out a school shooting. The suspect, then 13, was a possible suspect in connection with threats made online last year using photos of guns, and the FBI Atlanta field office said in a joint statement that within 24 hours, law enforcement officers interviewed the suspect, a gunman, 13 years old, who is not named in the statement but was identified earlier by local authorities as Colt Gray in connection with the threats. The suspect denied making any threats, the statement said. His father, who was also interviewed, told investigators he had hunting guns in the home, but his son did not have any unsupervised access. All access was supervised to that. Authorities then told school to continue monitoring the suspect, the statement says, but there was no probable cause to arrest him at the time. Georgia Bureau of Investigation, their version of it, said to authorities they were looking at back in 2023. And so it's about 10:20 a.m. Appalachia High School, roughly 45 miles northeast of Atlanta, Georgia. The teen immediately surrendered when police moved in and engaged him rather than putting up a fight or wanting to die. And he did have an AR platform-style weapon. And one of the questions was, well, where did he get the weapon from? Don't know at this time, probably Dad's hunting stock, which once again, for those people who think, well, you don't use an AR-15-style weapon for hunting. Actually, people do all the time. It's a very good hunting rifle. Then right away, Kamala Harris called for gun control. And I go back to what I said before. It wouldn't have mattered because when guns are not available, people just use something else. What gets me is, and I want to know more about this, at every time something like this happens, it seems to me that somebody had some information or there was an investigation or there were red flags, and we find out about it later on, that police had been watching this person or were worried about this person. In one case in Aurora, Colorado, with that movie theater shooting, the guy who did the shooting had been seeing a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is under an oath. They can't disclose information. You know, it's personal information, can't do that. So what exactly are we supposed to do when we have an individual and there are red flags? I am not in favor of, well, we suspect a person, therefore we're going to arrest them. I don't think we can do that. We got to maintain freedom in this country. We can't give law enforcement and government that kind of power. Yet, on the other hand, when we know that someone is an issue, there's got to be something we can do about it. And I don't know what. There was a shooting in Florida where it seemed that afterward, for a couple of years, it turns out the young man who did the shooting was a problem in the school. And even some of the teachers and administrators were saying one of these days he's going to flip. So this has happened many times in many cases around the country and around the world, because this doesn't just happen in America. And in case after case in America, there's always, when we look back, you see, there was that information, that red flag. They were posting stuff. They were saying stuff. With today's modern social media, it seems very rare that someone does something like this where they weren't talking about it beforehand. They're usually posting things, saying things online. They may not be saying things to people around them, may or may not, you never know. But in most cases, they were online somewhere, sometimes with multiple accounts. And I do know that law enforcement does what they can to monitor accounts like that, looking for people who might be a problem. The question is, once you find them, then you do what? Because there is a matter of violation of rights. And again, you don't want to give government too much power in this case because they'll violate innocent people's rights. But what about when they do find someone? You notice I'm not blaming the gun. I don't care about the weapon that he used. That to me is just insignificant and doesn't matter. Inconsequential. Doesn't mean a thing. And what I care about is there was something wrong. Even when he was 13 years old, there was something wrong here. And there were little hints that were dropped as to something being wrong, to the point that the police even showed up at the house and interviewed the kid and the parents. All right, so the question I've asked the last time this happened is, and then when we see hints like this, then we do what? And now, I don't have a clear answer for this. We got to get better at finding the clues, and then when we do find the clues, we do what? And for those people who often will say, well, we got to make sure this never happens again. I hate to say this, but it's true. It is going to happen again. It will. And in many other ways, many different ways, because there's people out there, whatever the problem is, they have multiple issues, multiple problems. And that's what we have to learn to deal with. Even just to say, let's keep an eye on that person just in case, doesn't seem to be enough. I'm not for, hey, we found someone who might be a problem. Let's immediately put them in an institution and start drugging them. No. But if I could put you in charge of this, I'm just going to put you in charge. What would you do? School officials have identified someone who seems to be unstable. Police go look at their social media and find, yeah, they are saying things which are, well, a little out there, and we have reason for concern. But they've never done anything, and there's no evidence of them ever doing anything to be concerned about. So we do what? Now, that's the real issue that we have to deal with, which is why you never hear me call for gun control, because that's not going to solve anything. From then on, we do what? 7:15, wake up.
Sure, this show is sustainable. We sequester all gas emissions to one room. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, live on AM 1030 and FM 95.1, weekdays at 6.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. Visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
It's the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Okay, so I was asking the question, and what do you do with the school shooting we just had in Georgia? And they did have a chat with this young man back when he was 13 years old a year ago, but couldn't find any evidence other than he had posted some things online that were of concern. But my point is, we always see red flags after an event like this. There's red flags all over the place. So what do we do about that? Now, Kevin in Wheatland says armed veterans patrolling schools. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, Kevin. That's not wrong. However, we got to add something to that, because if it's not a school shooting, it's a mall shooting or something. They'll find something else to shoot up, and you can say armed citizenry. That certainly helps too. I'm not opposed to that. The more good guys with guns out there, the better. But I still wonder, what do you do? Because they're always going to exist. There's going to be people out there who have some issue, some mental problem. And they've been identified as, this person might be, they fit all of the parameters, the red flags are going up. But what do you do? Because you don't want to infringe on the rights of innocent people. So on the other hand, you want to take care of those people who might be of actual concern. So what then do you do? And I don't have the answer to that. I'm just asking the question, and hopefully if we think about it, we can come up with some kind of a solution, but so far nobody has. All right, now, proposed law here in Wyoming says running over a wolf with a snowmobile is okay, but only if you kill it. This is from Cowboy State Daily. This is a story. Remember the one earlier this year? A guy saw a wolf out there on a property that it might have been his property. And he was riding around on a four-wheeler and went after the thing and was able to run it over. So the wolf is injured, and this is where it got people upset. Remember, he took it to a local bar. I think he had it all duct taped up, whatever. People posing for pictures with it. And this got into animal cruelty, which is what got people upset. And there's no law against what he did. So what do you do? Well, so now lawmakers want to write a proposed law. But on the other hand, we had this discussion right here on air with people calling in saying, look, we got to take care of wolves on our property. And I've had the discussion with you guys many times over about wolves and other bears and so on, getting onto a property where there's sheep and cattle, and so you got to protect your investment, right? And that's understandable. But then this law would say, look, if you want to run the thing over, if you see a predator on your property and you want to do something about it, go ahead and do something about it. But the moment you start to harass the thing, engaging in what would be considered animal cruelty, then we're going to have a problem. And that's where local law enforcement has to step up. So if you're going to run it down, kill it. Finish it. Here's the story as it was written by Cowboy State Daily. While it might remain illegal to chase down predators with snowmobiles in Wyoming, those who do so must kill the animal right away or face cruelty charges. That's according to a draft bill titled Treatment of Predators Working Group, voted by the Wyoming Legislative Committee on Wednesday. So we're a bit ways off here from the legislative session, but this might be offered up as a bill. The working group was formed to consider possible legislative reform. The story says Wyoming's predator policies in the wake of the reported torture and killing of a wolf in Daniel in February. That, of course, worldwide outrage after that. Meanwhile, in the group, some people showed up to the meeting that was taking place. Those who showed up Wyoming Capitol in Cheyenne to speak before the working group, the story said, and they did this yesterday afternoon, were upset that they never got a chance to talk. The working group met via Zoom, which was delayed in large part for the meeting. People had trouble getting in. So there was a lot of talk about why couldn't we get in on the meeting. That's a whole nother topic there. Okay, so the working group is an offshoot of the Legislative Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee and will recommend the bill to a committee. The committee then must decide whether to forward it to the full legislators for consideration in the 2025 session. The proposed bill would call for animal cruelty charges to be brought against anybody who runs down and injures a predator but doesn't make a reasonable effort to finish off the animal immediately after that. And then, of course, it gets into the story as to how all of this came about, and you already know how that happened. So there were some who were opposed to the whole idea of even running down an animal in the first place. Why not just go ahead and shoot it? That's going to be part of the discussion, too. If you see a predator on your property and you want to protect your livestock, okay, then how? How are you allowed to do this that wouldn't be considered animal cruelty? Do you just shoot it? This is where I have to defer to the people who actually live and work out there. And what's the best way to handle something like this? Because it's a predator on your property, and I think you have the right to deal with that. It's your government that decided to reintroduce things like wolves. And as those animals have come into areas where there's livestock, I mean, if the wolves had read the signs and stayed in park areas like they were told to do, we wouldn't be having a problem like this. But that's not going to happen. They get down into areas where there's livestock. And again, that's someone's livelihood. That's their investment, that livestock. And so to have, and a lot of these animals, really cows and sheep, are such easy prey, so easy to take down. Of course, predators are going to head into those areas. So when are you allowed to do something about it? Now, in Wyoming, immediately you can. That's where we got into the discussion when Colorado introduced wolves, and right away they introduced it in northern Colorado. And, of course, that pack starts to grow. They start having puppies, and right away those animals, those predators, start to cross over into Wyoming. And the rule is once they crossed into Wyoming, they're fair game. Again, ranch owners of every kind are allowed to take care of their ranch and protect their property and investments. So, okay. The question is going to come down to what is considered cruelty. And I know, again, some people are actually even offering the suggestion that just running the animal down in general is considered cruelty. Other people say, no, that's okay, but what do you do with it afterwards? How fast do you finish it off? And I wonder if they'll even get into how you finish it off. Chet and Yoder, going back to the shooters. School and mass shootings, instead of making psychology, science examinations, execute them, quit praising them. Okay, well, the problem is there's always going to be new people who pop up. Even if we execute a mass, and in many cases, when you have a mass shooting somewhere, the predator, in that case, the shooter, doesn't survive it. It's rare when they're actually arrested and brought to trial. It happens, but it's rare. What I'm after, Chet, is how to identify in advance and take care of it without violating the rights of innocent people who might get caught up in all of that. That's where it gets difficult. Stopping it before it happens. And no gun control laws are not going to stop it before it happens. That's not going to. Coming up on some local news we have to take care of after local news update on the weather forecast, and you and I get back into it. 888-97 Woods the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. Don Day's extended forecast comes at 7:45. There was some good rain that fell yesterday that helped the fires. Didn't put anything out, but certainly helped the firefighters. We're pretty much done with that for about another week. Things are going to dry out. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Covering world-ending catastrophes for years to come. It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Find content, chat live, and listen on demand on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
7:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So, earlier this morning I was talking about cars. If you didn't hear, California has passed a bill. We'll see if the governor of California signs it, that by 2050, automobiles are supposed to have a system where if you're going over the speed limit, a light starts to flash in your car and a little alarm sounds that you're speeding. Oh, isn't that annoying? I would have that disconnected so fast. And for people who say, but if you disconnect it, they'll have your car shut down. Trust me, I'll find someone who knows how to do it. Or I'll just buy an older car, because I'm not doing that. Well, then there's this, the whole push to get people into electric vehicles has not been going well, by the way. I've got some other stories about how in Europe it's failing even bigger, even though there's a huge push in Britain, for example, to force car manufacturers to create a certain number of electric vehicles and sell them or face fines. They're really trying to push it over there. It's not working. Sales are not showing that it's working, but they're trying. All right, so Volvo gives up plans to sell electric vehicles by 2030. And they were going to go all electric. I want to know, I have to go look it up because I don't know what was going to happen with GM. Remember that a little while ago? General Motors had this idea of going all electric by a certain date. And they were telling all of their dealerships, you have to start selling all-electric cars by this date. And if you're not going to do that, then you can't be a GM dealership. And I believe it was GM, if I have that right. And there's dealerships all around the country said, well, then screw you. And that includes several in Wyoming. Said, forget it then. We're going to just go independent. Not working well for them. Here's the Volvo story. So, car company Volvo, it says, has abandoned its target to produce only fully electric cars by 2030, saying it now expects to be selling some hybrid vehicles by that date. The car maker blamed changing market conditions for his decision to give up on the target announced only 3 years ago. I would say, let me correct that. Not changing market conditions. Conditions that didn't change. They tried to change the market by getting people into electric vehicles, but it didn't change. So no, it's not changing market conditions. It's market conditions that stay the same. Story says it comes as the industry faces a downturn in demand in some major markets for electric vehicles. The uncertainty due to the imposition of trade, tariffs, and so on. It talks about China. And just that people don't want them. There was an initial spike in electric vehicle sales because there were people who were curious about them and actually wanted them. And so there's your initial spike. But then I think that pretty much they've sold to their market. And even then, over half of electric vehicle owners, having owned one, have decided this isn't a good idea and wouldn't buy another one. Volvo, the story says, which has traditionally flaunted its environmental credentials, joins other major car makers, there we go, General Motors, Ford, in rolling back its EV ambitions. I wonder if General Motors is rolling back, then what about the dealerships that they said you have to go all electric by this date? I want to see how they handle that. Volvo now expects at least 90% of its output to be made up of both electric cars and plug-in hybrids by 2030. Now, here again, that's, well, we're not going to sell you electric cars. We'll sell you half electric cars. Do you think that works? Oh, let me see. WL in Crowheart. The fires from the wide cameras were started by the Forest Service and got out of control. I will include, I know what you're talking about, and I will include that in the story. The actual fire is miles from there. I will include that WL, he's in Crowheart, in the story because I did watch, after I posted that story, a video from the Forest Service that they did start some fires across the highway. And I found that out later, that they intentionally set some fires across the highway. Not all of those fires got out of control, but some did. And they were trying to burn off some fuel before the fire got across. He's talking about a story that I have on the Wake Up Wyoming site that shows the fire that still has Togety Pass closed. Also, Wolfie and Campion said, I don't have a solution, talking about school shooters. But a good start was to look at what changed in a child's life since I was young. When I went to school as a young man, I carried a gun in my truck rack. And some people also carried guns on a bus, and to go to school, put it in my locker, and then go to the rifle club after school. No one shot anyone. Yeah, so something, I think you're right, something has changed in that time, and we need to figure out what exactly that was. All right, speaking of that, I do have Don Day coming on in just a moment to talk about the weather forecast, which there was a little bit of help with some rain yesterday. I mean, that was a little bit of help.
Why is that person running? Are you okay? Is somebody chasing you? You're running on purpose? 7 a.m.
Yep, there you have it. A new level of crazy. And you heard it here first. And we're back. Sorry, we were busy tricking pescatarians into eating Rocky Mountain oysters. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
7:45 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off we go to talk to Don Day from Day Weather. Don, I was watching some Forestry Service people over in the Togety Pass area in some of the parts of Wyoming that were putting up videos, just updating Wyomingites on what's going on with the fires. And they did appreciate the rain that we got yesterday. Nothing was enough to put out the fires, but anything like that certainly lent a hand. The only problem was some of that fire, or some of that rain, came with a little bit of lightning. Now they're out there looking for any fires that might have started because of the lightning. Are we done with the rain?
Well, we are for now.
Okay.
The chances of rain over in that part of the state is pretty low for a bit. It really isn't until the middle of next week, around Wednesday and Thursday, before there's any decent rain chances. There could be isolated thunderstorms in the mountains this weekend, but to your point, it's more harm than good because you get lightning from those. So, there's there's nothing in the short term like yesterday that's going to come through. Now, on the flip side of things, I don't see a lot of wind either. So that will be helpful. But, in these rugged mountain areas, especially when there's a lot of beetle kill, honestly, it takes the first decent snowfall of the season to really put an end to it.
Right, and that was going to be my next question, because as I looked ahead on the forecast, I noticed over the next few days, not a whole lot of wind out there, so that's at least helpful.
That's the one positive we could get out of.
Okay, now, temperature-wise, though, I do notice, it's nice today. Today's going to be pleasant. Temperatures rise a bit for the weekend, but, I'm not looking at anything here that's going to keep me from going outside.
No, if you remove the fire activity, this is a great weekend coming up, in terms of what you want for outdoor activities. This is the time of year, as we talk about all the time, you can get really wonderful stretches of weather, and that's how it's going to roll from really today, but especially tomorrow all the way through Tuesday of next week. Around the middle of next week, we've got a front that looks a lot like this one that just happened, that just went on through. So that'll be the next chance that we may see something different. Until then, we're just going to kind of go on to cruise control weather-wise.
I have learned a few things by watching your morning YouTube videos, which I watch every single morning. And while we're not anywhere near ready for any winter event, I'm just looking up north of us. Way up around the Arctic Circle and so on. And there's certain patterns starting to shift up there that show that things are aligning.
Yeah, they are. They're changing up there. We've noticed the days getting shorter here. Well, they're really getting shorter up there in those higher latitudes. And we see that. And when you get into the latter half of September, first couple of weeks of October is when things really can change very, very quickly. Really after the third week of September. So we're in that 2-week sweet spot right now, to where we usually have some really good weather before those bigger changes commence.
All right, Don, thanks for coming on. Don Day with Day Weather. So, a lot's going to change, but not quite yet. So off we go to, I wonder, Frank, are you, wait a second now. Oh, Miss Mary, I lost him. I was about to go to Frank, and he's not there anymore. And I don't know if that's my fault or not, but suddenly Frank is gone. If you can give him a call back real quick, we'll just call it. No matter what, it's going to be my fault anyway that I suddenly lost Frank. And we can get him back on the line to do sports. Frank has taken off to go with some family that are from Florida, and they want to come out and see, up in the Black Hills, and things like that. So, he's started off yesterday in Deadwood, South Dakota, and then was going to take him around things like Needles Highway and stuff like that. There, we got you back, Frank. Are you still in Deadwood?
Yes, I'm still in Deadwood.
Okay.
Yesterday, I took my niece and my nephew over to go see the Bears at Bear Country USA. I was 2 feet away from a bear.
Oh, wow.
2 feet.
Wow.
It was in the middle of the road.
Holy cow. Did you get pictures?
Yeah, I got pictures of bears.
Okay, good.
Of
I'd like to see that. Okay.
But the bear didn't move when I was trying to drive.
Okay.
I was in the road with it.
Don't bears know? I guess they don't. He wanted you to get out and fight. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, now a couple of things. First off, our friend Drew from down the hall here was also in Deadwood. He just got back. Didn't know you two were in the same place at the same time.
I didn't see him.
Yeah, okay. Next thing is, every morning when you do have to call in from a different location, Mary and I come up with fun little ways to say that you're on the phone. Mary has typed up here on the screen in front of me to let you know you're on the line. Frunky Frunk and the Sporty Bunch, which I think...
Funky Funk?
Yeah, Frunky Frunk and the Sporty Bunch, which I think is supposed to be the name of your new band. I'm not sure how that works, but why not, Frank? Use it and get a gig in Deadwood.
I can do that. Of course I can. In junior college volleyball, Casper College lost all 4 of their matches in the Big Cheyenne tournament over the weekend, and that tournament was loaded with good teams from around the country. The Birds lost to Seward County, Kansas, Eastern Florida, Central Arizona, and Southwest Florida, so they're 2-6, and they'll be in the College of Southern Idaho tournament in Twin Falls starting on Thursday. The LCCC volleyball team 3-5 on the year after losing 3 of 4 in their own tournament. The Golden Eagles beat Central Arizona and lost to New Mexico Military Institute, Southwest Florida, and Colby, Kansas. They'll be in the CSI tournament as well in Twin Falls Friday and Saturday. Wyoming Cowboy football team will host Idaho on Saturday afternoon in Laramie, the folks will try to put that disheartening 48-7 loss to Arizona in the rearview mirror, and that is easier said than done. They have a long list of corrections to make, top to bottom, in just about every phase of the game. Well, they'll get better. They will need better quarterback play. They got some injuries to deal with, and Idaho is a decent FCS team. They gave third-rated Oregon all they can handle before losing 24-14. The Vandals won 9 games a year ago, so they won't be overlooked. However, Cowboys are favored by 8 on that Saturday afternoon game in Laramie. That'll start at 1:30. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. And yes, the National Football League season gets going this weekend. The Denver Broncos will start on Sunday on the road at Seattle. And the Broncos are still rebuilding. They're young and certainly don't have the talent that Kansas City has in their own division. But the Bo Nix era at quarterback begins for Denver, and the rookie did some nice things in the preseason. We'll see if that carries over to the regular season. That is a 2 p.m. start from Seattle. And that's it in sports
So
for now.
where are you off to today?
I'm going to go back over to Keystone, which was where I spent most of the day yesterday around, Bear Country, USA. And
Sure.
there's this place, Rush Adventure something that you can go down in a cave and ride these little rail slides that go from the top of the hill and stuff like that, and zip lining and that kind of thing. And
now, are you zip lining?
I probably not.
Okay.
Trust me, with 2 5-year-olds,
Yes.
that'll wear you out.
But you can put the 5-year-olds on the zip lines.
I probably could.
You probably could. I mean, you're Uncle Frank. You get away with stuff like this.
Yes, Uncle Frank.
Frank, yes.
Yes,
Uncle Frankie Frank and the Sporty Bunch. All right, thanks, Frank. So now he's over there with family around the Black Hills area having a good time and showing the Florida people what the Black Hills are all about. So he probably will do the Needles Highway. Got to go see the dead presidents. I wonder if he'll take them to Wall Drug in the Badlands, which is always worth it. Then there's the caves there in the Black Hills that can be explored. I haven't done that yet, but I've done a lot of the Black Hills, but I haven't got down into the cave yet. All right, coming up on some local business news time after that, update on your weather forecast, and you and I get back into it. We'll be open phone, so 888-97-WOODS the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Stool.
Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Thursday, and I swear I can see the weekend from here.
Today's show is sponsored by Armpit Hair Dye, because waving goodbye should be more colorful.
And I think it comes in scented, too. So, okay, it is the 8 o'clock hour. Every day of the week, at some point, I'm going to give you open phones, and this is that time. And it's a dangerous time, too.
Warning. Wake Up Wyoming is about to enter daily open phones. This means that anyone will be allowed to call in and talk about anything. I mean, imagine if we actually allowed you on air to say anything you wanted. Scary, right? Well, we're just that brand of crazy. If you are offended by what other people think, then maybe you want to tune out right about now. Just saying. If you should choose to call, just remember, the more funny and interesting you are, the longer Glenn will keep you on the line. Obnoxious jerks will be hung up on. Dave, all right, strap in, and let's do this thing.
888-97-WOODS the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. Talk about what I'm talking about. Change the subject, fine by me. Quick side note, when I was listening to news here at the top of the hour, not surprising. First off, unemployment numbers came in from last month. And experts, there's the air quotes, experts for once again, predict like 140-some thousand jobs or something like that would be added to the economy. And it was in the low 90s, nowhere near where they predicted. But also, yeah, and wages did not go up. We're kind of stagnant there right now, even though inflation has continued to inflate. Inflation has slowed down, but it's still inflating, just not at the rate it was a while ago. And I still want to see what the numbers really are for that, because they keep correcting numbers, which is typical. On the news yesterday, after I got home, was just trying to catch up on some evening news. Not surprising. Economic numbers that came out early in the year always get revised later in the year. And so a lot of the good news numbers that you got on the economy have been revised way down. Yeah, so I really would like to see more news coverage on that not only were the experts wrong when those numbers came out at the beginning of the year and even in the springtime, the experts were wrong, but the numbers we originally gave you in the media turned out to be wrong too, and everything's getting, by the government, by the way. The government put out those numbers, and now they're revising it way down. So things are nowhere near as rosy as you've been told. I don't like reporting that. I'm just telling you what actually is going on. All right, now, this next one, what I'm about to do, is really going to annoy. It's going to annoy you. It really is. But then I'm going to make you laugh. So if you put up with the annoyance, so I can make you laugh, okay? Hang in there. I'm going to have to say that name again. So Liz Cheney. Sorry. For those people who wonder why I play that, when she was in the Wyoming House of Representatives, Cheney was one of the most conservative members of the House of Representatives, and most of Wyoming really liked her representing us. In fact, some of us, me included, wanted to see her become Speaker of the House. She's really doing well. Then came the whole January 6th thing, and she wanted Trump gone. Even though she used to vote with Trump like 93% of the time she voted with Trump. But she wanted Trump gone after January 6th. To the point that she joined the Democrats on that January 6th committee, which was a whole nother can of worms, to do anything she could to do damage to Trump to make sure he was never elected to any kind of office ever again. That became her goal. And because of that, she lost all of the power that she had in the House of Representatives and then lost her job here in Wyoming when she ran for re-election. But I kind of figured she knew she would. Now, the reason I play that sound effect is because whenever I would mention the name Liz Cheney, that's the reaction I would get from listeners. Screaming and heads exploding. All right, now, since then, she's remained active. She took a lot of the money she raised while campaigning from some wealthy donors and put together a think tank. And the think tank is all about making sure Trump never gets elected again. So she just, here's the part you laugh at. Headline, Liz Cheney says she'll vote for Kamala Harris for president. Kamala Harris, pardon me. So, yeah, I know. And do you care? Nobody really cares anymore. She was speaking in front of a crowd at some event she was attending when she made the announcement as a conservative. And by the way, she is still. She just hates Trump. But as a conservative, she said, someone who believes in and cares about the Constitution, I have thought about it deeply. And because of the dangers that Donald Trump poses, not only am I not voting for Donald Trump, but I will be voting for Kamala Harris, she says. Okay. Well, of course, that endorsement doesn't go a long way with her credibility. The people who cheered her in that crowd were already Harris supporters as it was. And that doesn't mean that Cheney suddenly is a Democrat, but I have to stop and ask her a question. So you think Trump is more dangerous than Harris? Okay, wait, let's go with this for just a moment here. Now, this is the woman who wants to get rid of private health insurance and force us into a single-payer system that wants to do things like force people into electric cars as well. Well, the list goes on. When Harris talks about what she would like government to accomplish, it's all about taking away the freedom of choice that the American citizen has, you have, and government deciding things for you. the amount of money that she wants to spend. We obviously can't afford to do this. We've got to massively cut this deficit. But she wants to spend huge amounts more. What she wants to do to fight climate change, as she says, I mean, the list goes on. If you're talking about someone who's interested in freedom and the Constitution, you're not talking Harris. There's no way you're talking Harris. She's as socialist as it gets. I mean, she makes Bernie Sanders look a bit more conservative. She's as socialist as it gets. But that's a better... Okay, now my answer would be, if you're that dissatisfied, then vote for Donald. Then don't vote for Trump. Don't vote for Harris. Vote third party. How about that? But she doesn't see that as an option, because her thought is a third party, and she said this, a third party vote just guarantees that Trump gets elected. So don't vote third party. Got to vote for Harris to keep Trump out of office. So those are the statements that she made. I was disappointed with J.D. Vance. Was being interviewed in front of an audience, and he was asked about Liz Cheney's endorsement of Harris, saying she's going to vote for Harris. And Vance took off ripping apart Liz Cheney for all sorts of different reasons. But it was more like personal attacks. He really didn't go after what he really should have gone after, I don't think. So I was disappointed in hearing what his answer was to the endorsement with a bunch of personal attacks on Liz. My thought was, when I look back at Cheney as a representative for Wyoming, before the whole Trump fiasco thing happened, when she was just a representative, she actually did an extremely good job. But then something happened during January 6th that flipped a switch on her. And no, Cheney did not become a Democrat, but she did become a Trump hater. And by any means necessary, Trump cannot get reelected in her mind. And so she'll say and do anything. But her tactics, I said this when this all began, she's not picked the right tactics. Everything she's trying to do has failed. And you want to talk heads exploding. Trump gets reelected, you're going to hear this from Liz Cheney's house.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
8:20 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. All right, Brad, I disagree, but I'm going to read your comment. Brad sent me a text over the Wake Up Wyoming app about Cheney. Brad says, Glenn, the whole reason Liz Cheney became a turncoat is that she and Daddy realized that if Trump gets in office, her and Daddy's corruption will be exposed and they may end up in jail. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that has anything to do with the reason, really. Jay said, Liz Cheney contains the fundamental chemical components of mass destruction. Hormones. In other words, she's a warmonger. And many people have accused her of that. While transplant in Cheyenne, Cheney sounds like George Bush, destroy the Constitution to save the Constitution. And she really got a lot of people, and I understand why. I mean, you take was supposed to be the most conservative state in America, and it is a state that voted for Trump per capita more than any other state. And the representative that represents those people turns in to be a Trump hater. I mean, she just how in the world? And then runs for re-election as if she's actually going to get reelected, which is why there were some people in Wyoming that did support Liz and were arguing with me that I should be supporting Liz. And my answer was, I don't think you understand. There's absolutely no way what she's doing here is working. If she has a problem with Trump and would like to see somebody else, fine. And now she's turning to endorse Harris for president? If I were in Liz, I'd said this back when this whole thing started, way back when the whole thing started. If I were in Liz's position and I wanted to get rid of Trump, what I would have done is started working to help get other people elected, like let's take DeSantis of Florida. There you go. How about, Liz, you go work to get DeSantis as the nominee over Trump, rather than having hearings with the Democrats and trying to put Trump in jail and then endorsing Harris. I mean, that's not a winning strategy. So, I've never understood what Liz was really after with the strategy that she was using. I've known her for quite a few years and always considered her to be on a lot of things a very switched-on, smart woman. But when it came to this, what are you even doing? This is not going to work. And it's not. I mean, it's absolutely not working, which is why I say that Trump ends up getting elected. You're going to hear a massive head explosion of nuclear proportion from the Liz Cheney household in Virginia. All right, now, real quick, let's go to the Harris campaign. And I wonder how much news media is really going to be played on this. Waltz, which is the VP pick from the Democrats, right? Well, he's in a bit of trouble. Here's the headline. Waltz subpoenaed for oversight of $250 million fraud scheme. And called the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the nation. Representative Virginia Fox, a Republican of North Carolina. I've known her years ago when I was in North Carolina. Weird woman. But anyway, Wednesday sent a letter and subpoena to Waltz and his state administration associates with the federal child nutrition programs and Feeding Our Future, and to the Biden administration, U.S. Department of Agricultural Office and Inspector General. Waltz is, more than 70 individuals were charged in 2022 by the United States attorneys for roles in defrauding the USDA of $250 million in taxpayer funds. This all had to do with COVID money and stuff like that. Quote, as chief executive and the highest ranking official in the state of Minnesota, you, Walt, are responsible for this and the administration of that money, the statement reads. Quote, statements in the press, you and your representatives indicated that you and other executives, officers were involved in or have knowledge of the finances and where did all that money go. And basically there was a lot of fraud involved in it, and he was supposed to be overseeing all of that. So we'll see what happens to Walt. And I really don't think that is going to get a whole lot of media attention like it should. It has been mentioned in the past. I've heard it mentioned, but I just don't see the media attention that it really should get. All right, now, next story up. And I'm doing a little bit of house cleaning here, which is why I'm going through quite a few at one time. New York Times suggests, so when I read that, you already know this is going someplace stupid. New York Times suggests Americans move to Europe to find more affordable housing. Really? No, I know we're having a bit of a housing bubble problem here with costs and so on, but the answer is move to Europe. No, I would rather get America away from socialism, but okay. August 29th article. Want a Manhattan apartment? Not really. No, I don't. Try these European countries instead, cited a study. Why would I got a better idea. Okay, well, first off, it says Realtor.com's median listing price for a 500 square foot Manhattan apartment. And then they compare it to what's available in France, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. Okay, so here's a quote. Look first to Italy. New York Times 2020, their list of 52 places to look for a great spot. For about $750,000, you can buy 8,333 square feet. I got a better idea. Why not just move out of New York City? Now, if you're expecting me to say, well, come on to Wyoming, don't. And we got enough problem with people from California trying to move here. That's okay. Don't move to Wyoming. But if you just moved out of New York City, so leave it to the New York Times to take a look at how much it costs to live in New York City and then say, well, if you want more bang for your buck, move to Europe. And rather than saying if you want more bang for your buck, move out of New York City, but you can stay in America. But now that I think about it, maybe I have this all wrong. If a bunch of New York City liberals want to move out of New York City and go to Europe, I would assume that those New York City liberals would be very pleased to live there in Europe. I think that they would love it there in Europe. They want more socialism, there it is. It would suit them just fine. Let them go. Besides, that leaves more housing for the illegal immigrants that they let in. Don't forget, New York City is another one of those sanctuary cities. Sanctuary state and sanctuary city is New York. And as I've said many times in the past, it all sounds great to be a sanctuary until you have to do it. And you see the mess that they have now. So now that I think about it, I take it back. If New Yorkers cannot afford New York and they want to move, don't move to the rest of the country. Move to more liberal Europe. Liberal Europe will love liberal New Yorkers. Please do. Then we can go ahead and make, putting the illegal immigrants aside, because we got to move them out, we can go ahead and make New York City more of a conservative city and maybe even a conservative state. So now that I read the article and think about it, I don't think it's what the New York Times intended when they wrote the article, but in retrospect, I'm thinking it is a great idea. Go right ahead. All right, coming up on some local news that we have to take care of after a local news update on the weather forecast, and you and I get into it again. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. You can talk about what I'm talking about or change the subject. That's fine by me. I got a list of stuff to go through, but that doesn't mean we have to go with that. Beautiful out there this morning for most of the state, except those people who are dealing with smoke. Most of the state is not right now. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, on air, online, and on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. Be part of the show at 888-97-WOODS. This is K2 Radio.
8:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So I have a solution for California and a problem that they're having. I'm just going to toss out this solution. They're not going to agree with me, and they're not going to hear me anyway. I'm way over here in Wyoming, but okay. Here's a headline for you. Los Angeles, which is, by the way, as you've heard me say before, the proper way to pronounce it. My childhood hero, Bugs Bunny, pronounced it Los Angeles. Do not tell me that my childhood hero was wrong, okay? All right. Glad we had this talk. Los Angeles neighborhood is a haven for human trafficking, officials say. And then there's a whole bunch of politicians up there in front of the cameras screaming about human trafficking. Los Angeles city and county leaders, along with federal officials, briefed the public Wednesday on actions being taken on a 3.5-mile stretch of road that authorities say is ground zero for human trafficking, mostly kids and sex workers, by the way. The downtown press conference, officials detailed their collective crackdown, which isn't going to go anywhere, I know, on illegal activities on a 3.5-mile stretch of a street that I cannot pronounce the name of. And don't worry about it because you wouldn't know where it was anyway. Quote, what we see along this corridor is human rights tragedy playing out each and every night. These sex traffickers will recruit victims from foster care, from home groups, recruiting them and grooming them and encouraging them and engaging them in prostitution. What is common is even 12-year-olds brought into trafficking. And it shows all of these officials talking about it. There's a bunch of pictures of it and so on. Okay, here's my thought. If only somebody could just secure the southern border. Imagine, I just picture it now, that we actually had a secure southern border. Because most of the trafficking that they're talking about, including child sex slaves, comes across the southern border. And that, by the way, that includes a lot of the drugs. Not all of the drugs, but a lot of the drugs that come pouring across the border, too, could be stopped if somebody were to just seal the border shut. Can you imagine the trouble that would be saved. Los Angeles also has gang problems. Now, not all the gangs are from south of the border, but many are. Can you imagine solving the gang problem by just kicking those out who are not in this country legally and then sealing that border? There. So much of the problem just goes away right then and there. Imagine how clean the streets would be. They wouldn't be 100% crime-free, but it would be in a much better situation. And the amount of money that not just Los Angeles, but the state of California spends on illegal activity like this would be greatly reduced and can actually start saving money because now the state is deeply in debt. So let's just picture for a moment, just go back to the root cause, solving that problem at the border. This is where I've said many times before, if you want to solve a problem, this is why I wrote in my book, The Uncomplicated Life. You want to solve a problem, you have to go to the actual root of the problem. Dealing with all of the symptoms doesn't do diddly squat. Whatever problem you're facing in life, dealing with the symptoms isn't doing you any good. You actually have to deal with the root cause of the problem, and then all the symptoms go away. This is much like people who are really grossly overweight, and they come up with all sorts of other problems with high blood pressure and diabetes and on and on and on it goes. And the real answer is lose the weight, get yourself in shape, eat right, exercise, and most of those other health issues disappear. You've got to solve for the root of the problem. No, we can't just give you a pill to make all of this go away. It doesn't work that way. You got to take care of yourself. The same thing goes for situations like this. Gangs, drugs, prostitution, child sex slaves. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Would you like to solve all of those problems? Well, if you were to seal the southern border and only allow people to cross the border that have good intentions. I mean, I don't mind immigration. This is one of the biggest lies when it comes to illegal immigration is that people who are opposed to immigration are opposed to all immigration. And the answer is no, we're opposed to illegal immigration. And as you know, the reason that we have a system set up, and every country does, is in part to filter out, we don't need any more bad people here. We have enough of our own. We also need people that when they get here can support themselves. They're not a burden on society. They're not on welfare programs and all. They can support themselves. They're not bringing crime. They can support themselves. They don't have any diseases that we can't help, which, by the way, Southern California is dealing with several different diseases that the rest of the country isn't, and it's coming over the border. And so that's a problem as well. If only somebody could figure out how just to go ahead and seal off the border, not just in California, but across the line. And then we have to work on those people who have come into the country that are causing all sorts of trouble, not having them around anymore. Get rid of them. Imagine, in fact, I'm trying to remember what it was. I'm trying to remember what southern country it was. I want to say Honduras. I might have that wrong. But there's one country way down south of the border. They had a huge problem with gangs that were just making a mess of everything. And so what they did was they built a really big prison, and they rounded up all the gangs and threw them in this prison, and nobody's getting out. And this is a max high-security prison, and nobody's getting out. And all of a sudden, most of the crime problems for the country just disappeared. Gosh, isn't it interesting how that happened? Get the people who are the problem creators off the street and keep them off the street. I know more will come. Get them off the street, too. And leave the law-abiding citizens out there. And what do you have? Law and order, right? It's not all that hard to figure out. There was a story I gave to you guys earlier this week. Let's go back to New York City. 75% of arrests in New York City right now are illegal immigrants. Yeah, that was a number that was published in some New York City publications and on some news programs they have in New York City. 75% of arrests are illegal immigrants committing crimes. gosh, if there was only a way that we can just go ahead and seal up the southern border to keep more of this from coming in. And then, get this, imagine this, taking those people who are here illegally, especially the problem ones. I would get rid of, when we arrest someone for some crime and they turn out to be in this country illegally, just deport them. It's not. We're not going to have them in front of a judge in 10 years because they're going to sit in prison for a while. No, get them out of here. And don't let them back in. Now, if we did that, we're not going to solve all of our problems here in America. But imagine how many we could solve, how many would go away if we were to actually just seal up the southern border. Now, I know I'm saying this here on Wyoming radio stations, several Wyoming radio stations. But, well, except for one guy who lives up in San Francisco, Dave, nobody out there is listening. That's a shame. But, I know that even if I said it to their faces, they still wouldn't listen, I'm sure.
So I pulled this guy over, and I said, "How high are you?" And he said, "No, sir, it's hi. How are you?"
Cop pulled me over. He said, "Papers?" I said, "Scissors." And I won. So I drove off. He must have wanted a rematch or something because he was following me for like 45 minutes.
Wake up, Wyoming. Glenn Woods is live on AM 1030 K2 Radio and the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
8:48 is the time. That means off we go right now to Deadwood, South Dakota, where Frank Campina is waiting by to give us his latest sports report. Hey, let's real quick go to North Carolina, Frank. I think you might like this one.
Okay, I'm ready.
There's a restaurant that has extended their sign. No shirt, no shoes, no service. You've seen that? Okay.
Yep, I have. Yep.
Right. No shorts, no crop tops, no T-straps, no leggings, no short skirts, no cleavage showing. I would add on to that, there's certain people who should just not be wearing spandex pants.
Yeah. Are you talking about a restaurant or you're talking about a church?
It's a restaurant.
Boy, what a bunch of prudes.
Yeah, well, I would think that maybe sometimes when people walk in looking like that, it just grosses out the other customers, I guess, But hey.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that eye test, that optic test,
Yes, there is, yeah. So I would think that it may or may not hurt their business. I mean, on one hand, there's people going to look at that and go, well, forget you. I'm just not going there. You can forget. I'm not doing any business. No, and they would just leave. There's other people, though, that would look at that and go, oh, thank God, and go in and eat there. Yeah.
Glenn, if the food is good, maybe they'll go and change their clothes and then go have something to eat.
Do you remember a time, I think we've talked about this before, when people used to get dressed up to go to a nice dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to one of the finer restaurants in town with some friends, and people that were walking through the door had like cargo shorts and baseball caps turned backwards and stuff like that. And some of these were guys that were bringing very nice-looking ladies on dates. And I'm thinking, if you're going to do that, what happened to the day that people got dressed up for something like that? But not anymore.
Oh, I think that ship sailed years ago.
Years ago,
Years ago.
Yeah. At least if you're going to do that, take a whiff of your T-shirt first to make sure it's the one that's clean and not the one that belongs in the laundry. Yeah.
I'll give you that one. Junior college volleyball. Casper College lost all 4 of their matches in the Big Cheyenne tournament over the weekend. That tournament was loaded with good teams from around the country. Birds lost to Seward County, Kansas, Eastern Florida, Central Arizona, and Southwest Florida, so they're 2-6 on the year. They'll be in the College of Southern Idaho tournament in Twin Falls starting today. The LCCC volleyball team is 3-5 on the year after losing 3 of 4 in their own tournament. The Golden Eagles beat Central Arizona and lost to the New Mexico Military Institute, Southwest Florida, and Colby, Kansas. They'll be in that CSI tournament in Twin Falls starting tomorrow. Casper College women's soccer team won 2-2 on the year after a 1-0 loss to Truckee Meadows Community College from Nevada, 1-0, which was on Monday. and also dropped a 3-1 decision to Salt Lake Community College on Saturday. The T-Birds will host Otero, Colorado on Friday and Trinidad, Colorado on Saturday. Casper College men's soccer team 4-1 on the year with a 6-3 win over Truckee Meadows on Monday and a 2-0 loss to Salt Lake City. T-Bird men will host Otero and Trinidad on Friday and Saturday. Wyoming Cowboy football team, they're going to host Idaho on Saturday in Laramie. The Pokes will try to put that disheartening 48-7 loss to Arizona State in the rearview mirror, and that's easier said than done. They have a long list of corrections to make, top to bottom, in just almost every phase of the game, with the exception of punting. And Idaho's a decent team. They gave third-rated Oregon all they could handle before losing 24-14. Cowboys are favored by 8 for the Saturday afternoon tilt in Laramie. They'll start at 1:30. We'll have that for you on Cajun Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. And yes, the National Football League season gets going this weekend. The Denver Broncos will be on the road to start the season at Seattle on Sunday. And Denver is rebuilding, so they're going to be young and certainly don't have the talent that Kansas City has in their own division. The Bo Nix era at quarterback begins for the Broncos, and the rookie did some nice things in the preseason, and we'll see if it carries over to the regular season. That is a 2 p.m. start on Sunday from Seattle. That's it in sports.
So it doesn't sound like you're holding out much hope for Denver on this one.
No, I don't. Even if they had a good team, I wouldn't even give them credit for that.
Okay.
So they may win 6 games, they may win 7.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And this is their own fault that they're in this position they are in today. Because John Elway, their former president, had a chance to draft Josh Allen, and he was right at his fingertips and passed.
Right.
And that's why they've had like 7, 8 losing seasons in a row and haven't made the playoffs since Peyton Manning. So they have only to blame but themselves.
So that means every time this guy gets into a fight with his wife, she probably throws out, well, you could have hired Josh, you know.
I'm sure he gets that everywhere he goes.
Everywhere he goes, yeah. Probably having lunch somewhere and someone mentions, too bad we don't have Josh. The waiter probably says it to him, you know?
Yeah, okay. And then the waiter's tip will be less, but it'll be worth it.
It'll be worth it. All right, thank you, Frank. Coming up on some business, news time. And we'll roll into more open phones. Oh, it looks at your weather forecast, too. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
I'm so happy to be here, yeah. I'm just happy to be here. Still I know the world's on fire, the situation's dire. A lot of work and courage gonna be required, but
Thunderstorm.
Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. 888-97 Woods, the phone number, 888-97 WOODS. There's a reason you don't watch MSNBC. I'm about to give you another one.
Today's show is sponsored by Armpit Hair Dye, because waving goodbye should be more colorful.
And you can get that in scents, too. So scented armpit hair color. Imagine it.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave. To me, what I'm about to describe to you is really an odd thing. There's a television show called Morning Joe, and this is a not-so-hot rated program, but it's MSNBC's morning program. And Joe, of course, is Joe Scarborough, and his co-host, he ended up marrying her, and they do this morning show where they have guests on and discuss politics and so on. And it's a very quiet, slow-moving news, well, I wouldn't even say news, opinion talk program. All right, so the headline here is, Morning Joe is not kidding. If you believe in American capitalism, Kamala Harris is the way to go. No, I'm waiting for the laughter to die down. Hang on a second. No, there's still a guy in Torrington laughing. Hang on, we're getting there. You good? You good? Get your breath now? Need a sip of water? Okay, so what problem, and I'm going to play part of this, not the whole thing, but part of the problem that there is with this is so many people who listen and watch MSNBC are not really capitalists. So I don't know, was this an appeal to people who are capitalists? I won't play the whole thing. It's hard to listen to. Here's how this went.
This argument that was made yesterday by an economic reporter, don't worry about the insurrection, worry instead about tax code and I think regulations. That underlines a point that I've made on this show before that I'm going to make again. If you're a capitalist, if you believe in American capitalism, as I believe in American capitalism, unapologetically believe in American capitalism, it has lifted more people out of poverty than any other economic system ever. It has its problems. The sharp edges always need to be rounded off where it doesn't get in the way of competition and free markets. But if you believe in American capitalism, you should be worried about Donald Trump being elected. We always talk about democracy. We always talk about democracy, Madisonian democracy under threat, because Madisonian democracy is under threat. But American capitalism also under threat, because I will tell you, I grew up a conservative. I know you didn't, but what we conservatives believe is in less government, less power concentrated, the imperial...
Okay, this is the guy who is hosting on MSNBC, and then we're supposed to support Kamala Harris if we want less government and more capitalism, is what he goes on to say. I'm not going to play the whole thing because he goes on for quite a while, but you get the idea of this. So you should be afraid of Donald Trump. Well, let's review. Whether you're a Trump supporter or not, let's put that aside for a minute. Just going to take a look at, because you can argue things for and against them. I'm not concerned with that. Let's take a look at who is really in favor of free markets here. When Trump was president, he lowered regulations. Remember, for every one regulation written by a bureaucrat, which I think none should be written by bureaucrats, but every one that was written by a bureaucrat, then something like 3 had to be removed. Yeah, and it did make taxes easier and lower taxes on pretty much everybody. But also renegotiated trade treaties with countries all over the world. Really bad treaties that we had that put Americans and American businesses in a bad spot when it came to international trade. But redid those international treaties, contracts to make it easier for Americans to do business abroad. But then also made it easier to do business in America, where a lot of companies came back to America to open up shop and do business. Where they had moved abroad, they were coming back. In the meantime, we have the Biden administration, which Harris is part of, and has talked about her support of it the entire time she's been with Biden. But also she was the most liberal member of the Senate when she was a senator. Is she really a capitalist, honestly, when it comes to, well, we're going to close down health insurance and you need to get on government insurance, Medicaid for all, basically, a single-payer system. Does that sound like capitalism to you? Like free markets to you? That's one. We got to get you into electric vehicles and out of gas-powered stoves and et cetera, as this goes on, as they manage the economy. Does that sound like capitalism to you? Right. If you really wanted free markets and limited government, Joe Scarborough, who still claims that he's a conservative and he wants all this limited government stuff, and yet he votes for someone like Harris and even Biden, he votes for Biden, and he voted for Obama, yet he still talks about being a conservative. So I think the man is either a liar, we could easily call him a liar, or is just really confused about what conservatism is and what limited government really does look like. So, yeah, I almost spit my coffee out this morning when I first heard that. When I looked at the headline and then first heard him say that if you want capitalism, you're a capitalist, and you want freedom and free markets, then you got to go ahead and vote for Kamala Harris. Fred is in Colorado. Morning, Fred.
Good morning, Glenn. How are you this
Good,
fine
sir.
day?
What you got?
I got a couple of things for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
One, I think Donald Trump needs a bumper sticker, and I've got one for him.
Yeah.
It says, "Help Trump dump Harris. Vote Republican."
Okay.
Simple, to the point, but it's also a play on the name Trump.
Right. Trump dump.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
So that's number one. But number two, you were talking in the earlier hour about illegals in this country.
Right.
Now, I have a suggestion of how to remove them, but I got to tell you, a lot of people aren't going to like what I got to say, and they're going to think I'm a mean person. But
Okay.
if you don't mind, I'll say it anyhow.
Go ahead.
Well, I think what we need to do is start putting a bounty on illegals. You know, like as a dog the bounty hunter,
Right.
and the government would pay, and we'll have to pick a number that's reasonable. They can turn them in, then we tag them like they do cattle, so they can be marked. They take their fingerprint, they take their eye scan, and then they deport them. And that tag, if they come back into this country, would explode.
Ah.
But when you think of the cost, and I'm being dead serious on this point, you think of the cost that this country pays for all these illegals, whether it's housing, food, clothing, military, police, schooling, and all that. A $25,000 bounty or so, I bet you they'd be turning people in as fast as you can count.
See, I got a solution that's a lot simpler than any of that. That's not going to, because in order to do that, you're going to have to create a whole new government agency. It's going to be a lot of work. Here's what I would
understand.
Well, I would simply say, first off, no more free stuff. So if you came here looking for welfare handouts and all that kind of stuff, which you're getting a lot of right now, no. Also, no place to stay. We're not like in major cities. Colorado's one of them. Here's some place to stay. We have all sorts of shelters for them to stay in. No, you're not going to get any shelters. So you're not going to get any food. No, you can't see a doctor. No, you're not going to get any shelter. None of that. And you want to go looking for a job? Anyone who hires you gets in big trouble. You cannot hire an illegal alien, so no. If we take away all the incentives to be in America illegally, then they're going to go somewhere else.
Glenn, I totally agree with you, and I do think that would be the first priority.
Yeah.
But assuming that they won't do it, because there are always going to be those cities and those people that will still continue to help them.
Yeah.
I just think if you put a bounty on these people,
Okay.
then and I'm not saying you're going to get everybody, but even if you get a couple of million people out of the country,
Yeah.
and here's what I would do. I would give notice, a 30-day notice, to get out of the country. And if you're still here after that, this is what we do.
There is something also I would do, and I mentioned earlier this morning, when it comes to, let's say, the gangs. Right now, according to the police in New York City, and I'm not sure what it is in Colorado, but in New York City, 75% of the arrests are illegal immigrants. So if they arrest someone and they're in the country illegally, out. And I mean today. Don't take them to jail today. Take them to the other side of the border today. I mean, way out. And
it's not only in Colorado, and you talk about New York and Chicago, but my home state is Michigan, so I still continue to read Michigan newspapers.
Yeah.
They're having problems with Venezuelan gangs breaking into people's homes, and these are the upper-class homes, and stealing everything.
Yeah.
So, again, I think your suggestion is the best one,
right.
But I'm just saying if that's not working...
Okay. Harsh
then
tactics then. All right.
Go to a bounty, and we do allow bounties in this country, by the way. They're still legal.
All right. Thank you,
Okay,
Fred.
thanks, Glenn. You have a good day.
You too. Fred calling in from Colorado. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Welcome to Woke Radio WOK. Let's look at today's calendar and see what we're offended by. Or you can go outside and play it by ear. Just make sure everybody feels as miserable as you.
You asked for an expert. We didn't have the budget for that. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. and 24/7 on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
9:23 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. I'm not sure what you mean, N.A. or nah. He's in Cheyenne. Send the penguins after the illegals. I don't know what that means, but if they can run them out, that'd be just fine with me. And let's see, NJ Cat, about anyone flying illegals in to the country should be deported immediately today.
that would clear up who gets elected to office since they would be deported as traitors. Yeah. Well, the fact that the Biden administration was flying in people from other countries says a whole lot. But no, I do think, honestly, the way to solve the problem of how, cause I've been asked before, millions of people have come in illegally from other countries. What do you do? How do you fix that? Well, my answer would be, look, if you entered the country legally, hey, and you're here to start an American way of life, you can support yourself, you're a decent, law-abiding citizen, absolutely. See, I love immigration. I love the idea of people coming from other countries. We all did. When we look at our family lineage, we all came from somewhere else. That's a good thing. I appreciate that. But you came here for a reason. When I say people came to America to pursue the American dream, the American way of life, what I mean by that is you wanted to be free, to get away from the country you're in where dictators ruled. You wanted to be in charge of your own life. You wanted to build your own future. That means work hard and achieve. Not to be a burden on society, but to be self-sufficient. That's why you came here. Absolutely. Those are the kind of people we're looking for. So please come. Absolutely. And come here legally. We have a process like every other country does. We have a process for a reason. So fine. Anyone who came here illegally, here's how I'd get rid of them. Like I was just saying to our friend in Colorado. First off, cut off anything that's a benefit. No, we're not going to put you up in a shelter. Too bad. And no, you can't sleep on the street. So no, we're not going to have homeless camps and so on. No. Okay, so you have no place to stay. And if we catch people trying to stay someplace illegally, they get arrested. And here's the key to this whole plan. Anyone who gets arrested and it turns out that they are in the country illegally, they will be on the other side of the border today. All right, we don't have to put them through a long process of trials and so on. This has been a big part of the problem when people have been coming over illegally over the border. They get arrested, they get in front of a judge, and the judge has no time for them because there's so many. The system is way beyond overwhelmed. So they're given a ticket, come back here in 5 years or more for your court date. Now, honestly, that is not going to, obviously that's not going to work. So they're just let go into the country. What was the point of the court case? We know this isn't going to work. So in that case, I would say, forget the whole court thing. If they're arrested and while being processed, you're in the country illegally. They will be put on the other side of the border today. All right. Also, people who are here illegally don't get not just no shelter. No, we're not going to give you spending cash, which some of them have through different welfare programs and even COVID programs. No, sorry. So no food, no shelter, no money, okay, nothing. Want to go get a job? Sorry, none's available. We only give jobs to people who are citizens of the United States or people who have immigrated here legally. They can go get a job. Anyone who is here illegally, if you're found out, you will be on the other side of the border today. All right. Now, that ought to solve the problem because what will happen in most cases, not everybody, but in most cases, people would just turn around and leave because, well, they have nothing here. They came here for stuff, and they're not getting any stuff. So they're out. They're gone. Honestly, that's how I think we get rid of most of the people who are here illegally. Now, if they want to come back, if they really do want to get in, we have a process, and we've had it for a very long time. I am for cleaning up the process because, like with all government programs, it's a mess. We have a process to bring people in who are good, law-abiding people who have a means of supporting, at least a skill where they can get a job and support themselves. And they want to go through the process and come here illegally. By God, you can after we drop you on the other side of the border, you can get in line and come convince us that you should be in the country and tell us why, and we'll see if you can get processed in or not. If you can't, well, sorry, you'll have to go somewhere else. That's how I'd solve the whole thing. Right now, though, there's no one in government. Even if we do get a Republican House and Senate and Republican president, the way to fix all of this with the current system in place is just about impossible. So we'll have to make a lot of changes. Coming up on 9:30, local news coming away, and right after that, update on your weather forecast. You and I get back into it. 888-97 Woods, the phone number, 888-97 WOODS. Wake Up Wyoming.
Where Wyoming comes to talk. This is Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Be part of the show at 888-97 Woods.
9:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Okay, more embarrassment for Boeing. Remember, Boeing's had a lot of problems, airplanes, things like this, which I hope they make a comeback because they have been for the longest time the greatest aerospace company on the planet. I mean, leading for many decades, leading the world. And now they're having problems. So I hope they really do fix it. So, remember, they were competing against SpaceX to get capsules up to the International Space Station. And SpaceX has been just kicking their butts. Finally, Boeing launches its Starliner, which is supposed to compete with the SpaceX's version of the same thing. All right. Unfortunately, when the astronauts get up there in that capsule, there's some problems. Well, they had some problems on the launch, but they made it, and they get up to the space station, and now they're afraid to bring them back in that capsule. So the idea was floated, well, what if we let the capsule come down? And SpaceX can go ahead and send a capsule up to go get these guys who have been up there for quite a while. Well, that's what's going to happen. Here's the story. And this I look at as just embarrassing. Boeing's beleaguered spacecraft, the story said, will attempt to undock from the International Space Station on Friday, so tomorrow, return to Earth without any astronauts on board. The space agency said that teams are on track for the uncrewed departure of the Starliner capsule, provided a weather forecast remains clear, and the landing site is in New Mexico. The journey back to Earth is expected to last about 6 hours, culminating in landing New Mexico's White Sands Space Harbor in the early minutes of Saturday morning. The return flight represents the final phase of the high-stakes test flight that did not go as planned, the story says. The mission, Starliner's first crew trip to space, was meant to prove that Boeing could reliably ferry astronauts. And so far, they're not doing that. So, let's see. It goes. There's a lot of comments back and forth here. And they talk about how it's going to back away and then go. Hopefully, everything will go fine as it comes on down. It's unclear how NASA will now bring these people back, probably through a SpaceX capsule. All that's going to start taking place soon, as they're looking at the options. And again, those astronauts have been up there. I think they've been up there for like 2 months now. They were supposed to be up there for 8 days, but they've been up there now for like 2 months. And it's possible that they're not going to come back until the beginning of 2025, like January of 2025. We'll see how exactly that plays out. But SpaceX doesn't just have something ready to go right now. This was not planned. Everybody just kind of figured the Boeing capsule would work. This is not planned. So we have no idea when exactly they're going to come back. Supposedly first of the year. Now, they're okay up there. I mean, there's plenty to do, plenty of food. I got to wonder. I haven't thought about this before. Do you think they get paid overtime? And how much would that overtime be? I hadn't thought about that. Okay, well, I mean, I would be asking, wouldn't you? I would be asking for overtime pay for something like this. All right, on that note, I got something completely different to play for you here. Let me see if I can go ahead and find it. There we go. Speaking of getting paid extra, I want you to imagine you go to the airport to take a flight somewhere, and they've overbooked, and you got bumped. Did you know that your Congress and some president, I'm not sure who signed this, set up a system where you can be compensated for this?
Hi, it looks like you bumped me from this flight I was supposed to be on. Yeah, we overbooked it, which means we sold more tickets than seats available on the plane. And to our surprise, everyone showed up. Anything you can do about it? We're going to book you on the next flight that leaves in a few hours. She has no idea I follow Erica. Watch this. Actually, I've read the terms. This is called involuntary denied boarding, and in this case, I'm eligible for compensation. Okay, how much money do you want? Well, it depends. When's the next flight you can get me on? It leaves in 3 hours. According to the Department of Transportation, if the next flight you can get me on results in over a 2-hour delay, I'm entitled to 4 times the cost of my one-way fare. Show me where it says that. Right here, I paid $350 for the one-way fare, so you owe me $1,400. Oh, fine. Here's your check for $1,400, and I'll put you on the next flight.
Now, even though it was played out by someone who does TikTok videos, actually that is a true thing. So I would have to go look up the law so I could present it to you guys, but just a thought there. If you ever get bumped on a flight, yeah, you can. Now, so I wonder, what about, because this is Boeing, right? What about those 2 astronauts that are stuck on the International Space Station? Basically, what just happened is they got bumped from their Boeing flight, right? And they've been up there for months, and they're going to be up there for a few more months, so they can ask for compensation from Boeing under that law. That's going to be a lot of money. Then I wonder, whoever it is who hired them to go up there to be on the space station, it could have been Boeing, I'm not sure. Do they get overtime pay or some kind of compensation for this? Are they going to get their regular salary, or are they going to get some kind of compensation for this? Were it me, I would say, look, I want to be on the International Space Station. I would love to be up there working. I can't tell you how much I would love to be up there working on the International Space Station. That'd be amazing. Orbiting a flat Earth. But got to ask you, though, after being stuck up there for that much time, I would expect a little overtime. Wouldn't you?
Do you have any history of mental illness in your family?
I have an uncle who does yoga.
Allergies?
Cowardice and weak-willed men. And hazelnuts.
Sexual history?
Epic and private.
Okay.
Well, that image is going to stick with you all day. He's talking to himself in a padded room, and you could be the voice in his head. Join the conversation on Wake Up Wyoming, 866-97-WOODS.
48 to time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off we go to talk to Frank Gambino, who's over there in Deadwood, South Dakota, on the vacation thing. So, Frank, I know we're starting with football season, and this is really too early to do this, but at this point, to you, who looks good and who sucks?
In pro football,
yes,
I think the team to beat still is Kansas City.
Okay.
And Baltimore will be good. San Francisco will be good. Cincinnati will be good. I think, even though I hate to say this, Green Bay may be good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't want them to be. Trust
That's
me.
just hatred of Green Bay. I got you.
Oh, it runs deep, Glenn.
What have they ever done to you? What has Green Bay ever? Did you have a bad experience? Were you mugged in Green Bay?
Because this is how this works. If you're a Chicago Bears fan, then you don't like them. And if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, you don't like the Bears.
Because that's just the way it is?
Yeah, it's a rivalry that's been for over 75, 80 years.
Have you ever been to Green Bay, Wisconsin?
I've been once. I think I was 12.
Have you ever? Okay, so I assume while you were there you had some bad cheese and it just tainted you.
Well, no.
Okay.
I have nothing against the state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
I mean, their cheese is great.
Okay.
Their beer is great.
Okay,
Their
good.
brats are great.
Fine. Okay.
Their football team sucks.
Even if they're good, they suck.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I'm trying to figure out how rivalries work, Frank. I have never really figured this out.
You just there it is. There's rivalries are geographic proximity between two teams, the same goals between two teams, and mutual hatred.
Okay. That's okay.
I don't know how
else to explain that.
Way.
Okay. So you do think, though, since you were, and I know you're going to bring them up again, the first game tonight involves Colorado, which you also, speaking of sucks, they seem to suck already.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, the University of Colorado?
Well, no, I was talking, who's playing pro sport? Football starts tonight, right?
So the Broncos will play on Sunday at Seattle. And you know what? They've got They just paid one of their defensive backs like $96 million.
Oh,
but
God.
You know what? By the time they didn't draft Josh Allen and then gave Russell Wilson a very bad contract, which they're still in the hole for, I think it's going to take them another year and a half to kind of, get the right people in there and get some experience. That they're very young, and which is good because it's amazing now that when the Broncos were good, everyone thought they were God's gift to football. Their fans, and now the fans are like crickets. Like,
well, you see, this is where it's always confused me, Frank. We suck, but we don't get paid that much money.
Well, no, I mean, I've never understood that.
I don't either.
Even on our good days, we don't get paid. All right, junior college volleyball. Casper College lost all 4 of their matches in that big Cheyenne tournament held at LCCC over the weekend, and that tournament was loaded with good teams from around the country. The Birds did lose to Seward County, Kansas, Eastern Florida, Central Arizona, and Southwest Florida, so they're 2-6 on the year. They'll be at the College of Southern Idaho tournament in Twin Falls starting today. The LCCC volleyball team out of Cheyenne, 3-5 on the year after losing 3 out of 4 in their own tournament. The Golden Eagles beat Central Arizona and then lost to the New Mexico Military Institute, Southwest Florida, and Colby, Kansas. They'll be in the CSI tournament in Twin Falls Friday and Saturday. The Casper College women's soccer team 1-2 on the year after a 1-0 loss to Truckee Meadows Community College from Nevada 1-0 and dropped a 3-1 decision to Salt Lake City on Saturday. Casper College men's team 1-4 on the season with a 6-3 win over Truckee Meadows on Monday and a 2-0 loss to Salt Lake. Both the T-Bird men and women will host Otero and Trinidad, Colorado Friday and Saturday. Wyoming Cowboy football team will host Idaho on Saturday in Laramie, and the Cowboys will try to put that disheartening 48-7 loss to Arizona State right in the rearview mirror, and that is a lot easier said than done because there were so many bad moments in that game. How do you kind of erase that? They have a long list of corrections to make, top to bottom. Almost every phase of the game with the exception of punting. Idaho's a decent team. They lost to number 3 Oregon 24-14, so they gave them all they can handle, but the Cowboys are favored by just above by 8 points. And that Saturday afternoon in Laramie, which will start at 1:30. We'll have that for you on Cajun Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. And yesterday, the NFL season gets going this weekend. The Denver Broncos will be at Seattle. Broncos still in the rebuilding mode, so they're young and certainly don't have the talent that Kansas City has in their own division. Maybe the Los Angeles Chargers still has more talent than them. The Bo Nix era quarterback in Denver begins, and he did some nice things in the preseason, and we'll see if that carries over to the regular season. It is a 2 o'clock start on Sunday from Seattle. And that's it in sports for today.
Where are you off to?
I'm going to go to this Rush Adventure Park. It's near Keystone, South Dakota.
Okay.
You know, they have a cave and a slide and everything else, you know, so I'm just going to kind of hang out with the 2 5-year-olds and just kind of do that. And, you know, it's a beautiful day here. No wind. It's been in the 70s. We got a little bit of rain here yesterday.
Sounds absolutely
yesterday morning, so we're not on fire, which is good. So let's kind of have one last day with the family, and then back to real work. Come on.
All right, Frank. Have a good time. Coming up on some local business we got to take care of. News time after that. And then the weather forecast. Let's Wake Up Wyoming.